The Sabbat is one of the most misunderstood and misrepresented elements of witchcraft and pagan practice. Too many, to some. But to some, it evokes the images of secretive gatherings and arcane rituals. To others, it is a celebration of the Earth's natural cycles and a space for spiritual reflection. What it has rarely been until recent decades is correctly contextualized. Its history is far older than most realize and far deeper than these stereotypes and sensationalism that have obscured it. The Sabbath has endured because it speaks to something fundamental, our need to reconnect with time, nature, and the unseen rhythms that shape existence. To understand the Sabbath, we must go back, not just to the Middle Ages, but to the roots of human civilization. So the origins of the Sabbath stretch back into prehistory. Long before it was called a Sabbath, humans marked seasonal changes with ceremonies tied to survival and spiritual meaning. Early agrarian societies in Europe and the Near East aligned their lives with natural cycles: planting, harvesting, birthing, dying. These weren't just economic events, they were actual spiritual ones. The movements of the sun, the phases of the moon, and the changing seasons were understood as sacred. The Celtic peoples observed four major fire festivals: Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane, and Lunasa, or Lammas. These cross-quarter days marked crucial turning points in the agricultural year. Samhain was the end of the harvest and the start of the dark half of the year, a time associated with death and the ancestors. Beltane celebrated fertility and the burgeoning life of spring. Beltane is the opposite of Samhain, or on the axis, the pole itself. These festivals were often marked by fire rituals, offerings to spirits, and community gatherings. In parallel, the solstices and equinoxes were honored by a variety of cultures, from the builders of Stonehenge to Norse and Germanic peoples. These solar markers were used to trace the year and ensure alignment with seasonal needs. Over time, these observances became part of a broader spiritual worldview that placed humans within the cycles of nature, not above them. What we now call the Sabbat is an evolution of these ancient practices. The 8 festivals of the modern Wheel of the Year are a synthesis of multiple folk traditions. They were not originally a unified system, but they were all grounded in the same principle: alignment with the Earth's rhythms. These early rituals were practical and spiritual, marking times of planting, harvest, and the transition between light and dark. With the rise of Christianity in Europe, older pagan traditions were gradually suppressed. The early church sought to replace indigenous festivals with Christian holy days, often repurposing existing celebrations. Yule became Christmas, Imbolc became Candlemas. But while the surface changed, the deeper patterns remained in folk memory and practice. It was during the late Middle Ages and into the early modern period that the Sabbat as a concept took on a darker tone. The term witches' Sabbath, later Sabbat, began appearing in ecclesiastical and legal documents in the 15th century, largely as part of the witch trials and inquisitorial campaigns. Authorities accused supposed witches of attending nocturnal gatherings where they worshipped the devil, desecrated Christian symbols, and engaged in licentious acts. These accusations were almost entirely fictional. There is little to no historical evidence of organized satanic witch cults during this period. The image of the Sabbat was largely constructed by inquisitors, theologians, and demonologists. It was a propaganda tool used to justify persecution and enforce conformity. The church conflated surviving folk traditions such as midwifery, herbal healing, and seasonal festivals with devil worship. And this, we're talking about the theological devil from the Christian perspective, obviously. Nonetheless, these stories had power. They were used to instill fear, control populations, and eliminate threats to orthodoxy. Women were disproportionately accused, especially those who were poor, widowed, or socially unconventional. Midwives and herbalists were often targeted as they preserved older knowledge tied to nature and the body. Ironically, even as the Sabbat was vilified, it became a symbol of resistance. For those on the margins of society or those who preserved ancestral customs in secret, the idea of gathering to celebrate nature and communing with spirits remained powerful. The Sabbat, whether real or imagined, represented freedom from religious control, reclamation of personal and communal power. The 20th century brought a dramatic shift as interest in alternative spirituality grew, especially after the Second World War. Paganism and witchcraft underwent a revival. The most influential of these was Wicca, a modern initiatory religion that drew inspiration from folklore, ceremonial magic, and reconstructed pagan traditions. Gerald Gardner, often credited with founding modern Wicca, introduced the concept of the eightfold wheel of the year. This system merged the four Celtic fire festivals with the solstices and equinoxes. Doreen Valiente, one of Gardner's key collaborators, helped formalize the rituals and philosophies of Wicca, emphasizing seasonal celebration as the way to live in harmony with the natural world. Other traditions, such as Druidry, heathenry, and paganism in general, also adopted seasonal festivals. These were not necessarily called Sabbats in all systems, but the framework was similar. 8 key points in the year marking natural transitions. Today, Sabbat celebrations vary widely. Some groups hold elaborate rituals involving circle casting, deity invocation, and symbolic enactments of myth. Others prefer simple acts of lighting a candle, journaling, or just really just spending time in nature. The Sabbat has become a tool for spiritual reflection, a way to step out of the noise of modern life and reconnect with deeper cycles. At its heart, the Sabbat is about honoring life's cycles. Each festival represents a stage in the journey of nature and, by extension, the human spirit itself. The Sabbath invites practitioners to engage with the themes of birth, growth, death, and rebirth, not as abstract concepts, but as living realities. For example, Imbolg celebrates the first signs of spring and is associated with purification, renewal, and preparation. It's a time to set intentions and clear away stagnation. Beltane celebrates fertility and the union of forces, often symbolized by the sacred marriage of the god and goddess in most Wiccan systems. Lunasa marks the beginning of the harvest, a time to give thanks and recognize the fruits of one's labor. And then Samhain honors the dead, acknowledges endings, and provides space for grief and ancestral connection. These observances are grounded in the natural world, but also in the internal landscape of the practitioner. The Sabbat is not just about outer ritual, it's about inner alignment. It encourages self reflection, spiritual development, and connection to community. Even solitary practitioners often report feeling part of something larger than they observe or when they observe the Sabbats. There's a shared rhythm, a collective awareness that transcends distance and tradition. Crucially, modern paganism encourages personal interpretation. There is no central authority dictating how Sabbats must be celebrated. This flexibility makes the Sabbat accessible to people of different backgrounds, beliefs, and lifestyles. Whether you live in a city or in the countryside, whether you follow Wicca, a reconstructed tradition, or your own personal path, the Sabbat can serve as a meaningful anchor in your spiritual life. Despite its growth in popularity, the Sabbat remains widely misunderstood. Mainstream portrayals of witchcraft often lean into sensationalism, depicting Sabbats as sinister or eroticized spectacles disconnected from their real world origins. Popular culture tends to flatten or distort the diversity and depth of modern pagan practice. One of the most persistent myths is that Sabbats are satanic in nature. This confusion stems from the church's historic demonization of anything outside its control. In truth, most pagans and witches do not believe in the Christian concept of the devil, the theological devil itself. Quite often they will believe in the folkloric devil, though, so you've got to make that distinction, obviously. But the Sabbat is not about blasphemy or rebellion against Christianity. It's about reverence for nature, for spirit, and for the cycles that govern our lives. Another misconception is that Sabbat rites are secretive or exclusive. While some covens or traditions may keep their rituals private, many modern celebrations are open, community-based, and focused on inclusion. The Sabbat can be deeply personal, but it is not inherently secretive or elitist. Lastly, there is the stereotype of the Sabbat as purely performative: costumes, bonfires, theatrics. While some rituals may include symbolic elements, they are usually grounded in sincere intention. Like any spiritual practice, the Sabbat has depth, purpose, and meaning beyond surface appearance. Those unfamiliar with paganism are encouraged to approach the Sabbat with an open mind. It's not about converting or convincing anyone. It is an invitation to witness a different way of relating to time, spirit, and the earth itself. Respecting that perspective, even without adopting it, is a step toward greater understanding. So, in conclusion, the Sabbat is not a relic of the past. It is a living practice that continues to evolve. From its roots in ancient seasonal rites, through its distortion in the fires of persecution, to its revival in modern paganism, the Sabbat has remained a constant thread in the tapestry of human spirituality. It offers a way to mark time with purpose, to live in tune with natural rhythms, and to deepen one's connection to the sacred, however one defines it. In our modern society, where we find ourselves generally to be become more disconnected from the actual cycles of not just the day, but of the year, of the seasons. You know, the Sabbats are quite very, very relevant nowadays. It reminds us that we are not separate from nature, but we are actually part of it. It invites us to slow down, reflect, and honor the turning of the wheel, not just in the world around us, but within ourselves. So, during the time of the year when we're moving into the winter months, when things are starting to slow down, the energies are starting to decrease. Allow yourself to actually slow down a bit. I know we have to continue with our daily lives and our daily jobs and everything else, but just try and recognize that cycle of the year and honor it. But whether you light a fire, or you draw just a single tarot card, or you walk barefoot through the grass, or sit in silent meditation, whatever it is, the Sabbat is there. The cycles are still there. They will always be there. They're just waiting to be remembered by a lot of us, and ready to guide you back into alignment. So, recognize you don't have to go off and celebrate them and big fancy rituals and ceremonies, but just recognize those cycles within yourself and without yourself. All right. So that's it for today. And thanks for watching again. And I'll see you next time. Cheers. Bye-bye.